Welcome to Episode 3 in the Power Wheels Custom Car Body Series. Today, I will show how the fiberglass and gel coats were applied to get our custom body looking like this. As a review, the project started out as a pink Barbie Mustang that was given a power saw haircut to remove the body, windshield, and mirrors. Episode 1 was about designing a car body that would fit the donor car, and Episode 2 was about cutting out foam panels, gluing them together, and carving the resulting block of foam into the desired custom car shape. Once the foam is carved, we want to seal it in preparation for applying 2 layers of fiberglass cloth and 2 layers of resin gel coat. The easy way to do this is to first apply a coat of white PVA glue and let it dry. This is the windshield being coated, and it is taken on the code name of the Bra in my backyard workshop. I like to use cheap throwaway brushes for all of the glue, fiberglass, and epoxy applications. Cut the fiberglass cloth into pieces large enough to cover the areas that you plan on laying up in one sitting. It's best to work one area at a time, because once the epoxy starts to set up, any further work is impossible. With the exception of the first batch, I never mixed up more than half a small cup of epoxy at a time. The first batch was slightly bigger and also a disaster that started smoking in the cup halfway through the start of the application. I used slow drying hardener, but it's only slow once you get it out of the cup. In the cup, it's literally a smoking time bomb waiting to ignite your hand. Once you wet down all of the fiberglass, you'll want to keep working it until it sets up to remove air bubbles and keep it from lifting up. This can take up to 30 minutes on a normal day, and adjust that up or down depending on the temperature outside. One other lesson I learned on the first day: buy a big box of disposable latex gloves and don't do anything with epoxy prior to putting them on. Also, be aware that any clothing that comes in contact with epoxy will never be red carpet ready again. I wore the same t-shirt and shorts for days until I tried to fold the shirt and it snapped. There comes a point at which the epoxy and fiberglass are set but not hard. This is the time to trim the edges with a utility knife. Anything that can't be cut with a knife can be sanded off once the epoxy is fully set, but you can save a lot of time and effort by trimming first where possible. Overlapping edges and loose ends can be sanded by hand with an orbital sander, with a Dremel, a multi-tool, or a rotary sander. I used all of them on this project. Once the first layer of fiberglass was installed, I was also successful at filling additional imperfections with Bondo and sanding again to blend in the repair. If you don't like sanding, this is not a project that you want to take on. I did all the work in my backyard with eye protection and a breathing mask. You can cut the fiberglass cloth to help take it around sharp corners. If you make scissor cuts after the resin has been applied, it will work, but you may have to buy your wife a pair of new scissors and spend a night or two on the sofa. That green stripe down the front of the Batmobile was made from a thin piece of sheet plastic I glued over the foam to get a nice, straight, flat profile. Getting it perfect by just carving it in foam proved to be a task beyond my abilities or desire to persevere. Once I completed at least 2 layers of fiberglass over the whole project, it was time to brush on the gel coat, which is nothing more than a coat of epoxy resin by itself. In this case, I also added some black pigment specifically designed for this purpose. After sanding the first gel coat, it was much easier to see imperfections and fill or sand to the desired level of perfection. I could have prolonged this process for another 2 months, but was running out of good excuses for not showing up for work and ultimately settled for what you see. Since I was still using slow setting hardener for the epoxy, I was able to go over the same area multiple times and add more material or remove paint runs as needed. I did the bottom side of the car first and then flipped it over to do the top. I also trimmed the car on each side for the first coat. This allows the resin to flow out nicely and minimize drips and unwanted migration of epoxy to the lowest part of the car: your clothes, your hands, the patio surface, your shoes, and so forth. I normally hate painting, but the gel coat part of this project was really fun and fast. If it goes on shiny, it stays shiny, and it gets really hard. If you make a mistake, just sand and do over. Couldn't be easier. Be prepared to pick out loose brush bristles, flying bugs, and anything else that happens to ride the jet stream and land on your wet project. It's also possible to sand and buff out small imperfections once the epoxy is hardened. I put the body on the car and got one of my assistants to take it for a spin. There's still a lot of work to do, but I was happy with the progress that was made so far. Please hit like and subscribe so I will have some excuse to film episode 4. Thanks for watching.